Good morning to the Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, online viewers, radio listeners via St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM and other radio stations. I'm Rolika Roach and welcome to the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, November 7th, 2018. At this time, I invite the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, the Honorable Leona Romeo Marlin, to address you. Prime Minister.
Good morning to all, my colleagues, members of the press. Good morning, St. Martin. On Sunday, November 11th, the people and the government of St. Martin will be celebrating St. Martin's Day. 370 years of unity and friendship. This year, the official celebration will be hosted by the president of the Collectivité of French St. Martin, Daniel Gibbs, in French Quarter. The official events are as follows. An ecumenical church service will be held at the Tabernacle Methodist Church in French Quarter at 6 a.m. The wreath-laying ceremony will be held at the Border Monument at 7:30 a.m. Official speeches and the toast will be hosted at the Telbert County Stadium at 8:15 a.m. The final event will be at the St. Martin Day Parade that will start at the Corralito Road to the Telbert County Stadium at 9:30 a.m. Musical entertainment and sporting events will be organized throughout the afternoon and evening in French Quarter. I encourage all residents and guests to come out and enjoy the activities and festivities as outlined above, but please be safe and courteous to each other and avoid unnecessary conflicts, as the emphasis on St. Martin Day is unity and friendship. I also take this opportunity to clarify that St. Martin Day is not a national holiday, and thus Monday, November 12th will be a regular working day. Additionally, the Council of Ministers has taken the decision to grant civil servants the entire day off on December 24th, Christmas Eve, and December 31st, All Year's Day. As a result, all government offices will be closed on those days. Work will resume on January 2nd, 2019. The government of St. Martin has taken note of the article in the Volkskrant with reference to the dump. In this newspaper article, reference is made to a commissioned report of the World Bank that allegedly shows levels of hazardous toxins in the smoke coming from the St. Martin landfill. The article wrongfully concludes that the government of St. Martin is maliciously keeping this information from the public. In October 2018, the civil servants within the work group of the government of St. Martin received a draft copy of a baseline study performed by a consultancy firm that has been hired by the World Bank to assist with the preparation of the Emergency Debris Management Project. The report is currently being finalized and serves to determine which measures are necessary to protect the occupational health and safety of the workers on the fire suppression activities. Recognizing the study has been commissioned by the World Bank and thus belongs to the World Bank, any disclosure of the content of the report or the timing or form of such disclosure would be determined by the World Bank in accordance with the World Bank's policy on access to information. We have received several requests to share the contents of the study. However, it is not our document to share. It is important to highlight that the study does not include the environmental or public health repercussions of the surrounding communities in its scope. Samples were taken directly from points of exhaust at the landfill in areas of the immediate vicinity of the fissures. Testing was not done at any points outside of the landfill to determine the levels of contaminants in the traveling smoke. We are in talks to engage another entity to measure the air quality in neighboring communities. From this assessment, a plan for a permanent air quality testing system can be put in place. It is our full intent to share and communicate effectively with our community leading up to the start of the fire suppression activities. The end of the landfill fires is of critical importance for St. Martin, and this government remains fully committed to this cause. I thank you, and I await your questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Minister of Public Health, Social Development, and Labor, the Honorable Emma Lee, to address you. Minister Lee.
Good morning, colleagues, those here from the media attending, and those listening by radio, television, or internet. Actually, I'm going to dovetail into what the Prime Minister just touched on, and that's more specifically about the recent comments that were made about the emissions from the dump. Just to be very clear, there's no doubt that the emissions from the dump are not healthy for the population, right? And certainly that the testing that was done, and I was there with the consultants, EE&G, with the minister from VOMI, when they were setting up the project and when they were executing the study, and also received a very good explanation from them what to expect from the study, right? And without a doubt, when the fires are flared up, in other words, when there is an open fire and a lot of smoke from the dump, that's a very different situation than what we're talking about on our regular day-to-day activities. Based on the report that was in the media, I did request a copy of the draft report, and I think there's some elements in this that I think are good to go over again. Remember that the main point of the study by EE&G was for the fire suppression activity, which is being funded in the first tranche of the World Bank grant. So there is a project that will be bid out to a contractor to come in to extinguish the fires which are burning underground. As part of that, they need to be able to put in their terms of reference what precautionary measures the contractors would need to take. So what they did is they measured the smoke directly in where the smoke emissions are from. And actually I have a picture, and I'll send this out as well. So here's a picture with the minister and I with the consultant, and you could see actually there was a small fissure in the ground, and they literally put their measuring equipment in the smoke to measure what was coming out of the ground, right? And so they measured from the vapor emissions, and also they measured in the heavy equipment. They put their testing equipment inside to get an idea of what the operators of the equipment could expect. As the Prime Minister touched on, the points were actually literally in the fissure a foot away from where the smoke emissions were coming. And 2 points I'd like to just touch on. So it mentions the results of the area upwind control samples. So in other words, they measured in the fissures, but they also did as a control, they put their testing equipment at some distance from the fissures. The results of the area upwind control samples showed significantly lower concentrations of the COCs, which are constituents of concern, tested for which compared to the area test samples. So in other words, what they're saying is they put their equipment away from the actual smoking fissure, and they found much less concentrations which you would expect, right? But those test results were their control. Their testing report is more what they found in the fissures themselves. And this is their disclaimer that's in the report, and I think it's highly relevant. These air quality test results and conclusions contained herein do not contain reference to or discussion of potential for off-site migration of COCs, constituents of concern, or the potential for impacting surrounding populations. So they're making very clear in their report that you cannot take the results of this and extrapolate it to what the health might be, what the impact in the surrounding area may be, based on how the wind would carry these particles. Perimeter air quality monitoring of the landfill and potential impacts to the surrounding areas from emissions is recommended to be performed as part of the fire suppression activities to be protective of human health and the environment. So what they're recommending is, as part of the program, that we do set up sampling for a distance, a perimeter around the dump so that we understand what the health impacts are. And that's certainly one of the things that we're looking at as the ongoing of the project. This sampling and analysis event was performed to assess the worst case scenario, exposure scenario for workers that will be performing fire suppression and working within an active combustion and smoke impacted area. So they literally looked for what is the worst case scenario that the workers would be exposed to. These data should not be used for other purposes, in particular speculation as to what off-site concerns may or may not be occurring. So I think that the disclaimer within the report is very clear. It was really done for a very specific purpose, and I think that if it's true that a representative of the World Bank in turn turned this over to the media and allowed this to become distorted, I think that's a shame. Because, again, when we had our conversations and we initially understood what was the scope of the project, we were very clearly instructed, you cannot use this for any other purpose than for the terms of reference for the fire suppression. You cannot extrapolate this to anything else beyond that. So it's a shame that a sort of a miscommunication, a misperception has been created in the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Lee, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, the Honorable Wycliffe Smith, to address you. Minister Smith.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roach. Greetings to all gathered here this morning, Madam Prime Minister, my colleague, Minister Lee, to the Department of Communications, members of the press, as well as to those who are listening and viewing via radio, television, or social media. And good morning, Sualiga. This morning, as we draw close to the celebration of St. Martin Day, I am distressed by the all too frequent news and reports of the violence in our community. My people, we are called the Friendly Island, and not too long ago, we were still living in that culture. Today, violence and crime have invaded our communities, our homes, and our minds, gripping our residents with fear and isolation. Our children, our youth, our adults, and senior citizens are all affected. And I have received too many reports in the past couple of weeks about school children engaging in bullying and fights while being encouraged to do so by their peers. How have we allowed this to happen? Parents, where are the good values and virtues that we've learned and that we were to pass on to our children? It is time to put a stop to this digression. Good manners are free. Respect for self, respect for others, and respect for authority are lessons that begin at home. This burden cannot be left to our educators. Parents, you are your child's first teachers. If we as a community promote the good principles with which we were raised, then it will be easier for the village to lovingly correct our children when they stray from these values. To reclaim and preserve our friendly identity as St. Martiners, we must combat violence with peace. When faced with conflict, encourage our children, our neighbors, and ourselves to walk away. We must defeat aggression with compassion. Place yourself in the other person's position and apply the golden rule. Let us do to others as we would have them do to us. We must encounter negativity with a positive energy. Use the challenges that come our way to propel us to be better, stronger, and greater. So let us work together and overcome together. That being said, we all have the opportunity to be part of the solution. This evening, the Student Support Services Division will be hosting an informative session entitled Fighting in Schools, the Role of the School, Parents, Police, and the Social Media. This is aimed at the general public, especially parents of primary and secondary schools, school-going children. The workshop will be held today, November 7th, at the University of St. Martin from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. This workshop is to educate and empower parents, teachers, and the general public via an open panel discussion. It will deal with the recent surge in school fights, the influence of social media, and the responsibility of the community. In addition to the anticipated fruitful and interesting discussion with hand-selected panelists, this workshop will brainstorm solutions for us to utilize as we move forward. On behalf of the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sport, I extend my gratitude to the organizers in the Department of Education and in the Department of Education Innovations and our partners for the Too Cool to Loot campaign, UNICEF, for bringing awareness to our community, especially to our young people, letting them know that looting is stealing. The latest event was held last Saturday in the format of a youthful debate. The debaters and their coaches of the St. Martin Youth Parliament and the Hyacinth Richardson Foundation put a lot of effort into preparing for the debate. They both presented arguments, and the stronger team won. But more importantly, St. Martin is the victor because we are all too cool to loot. On Thursday, November 8th, the USM seminar series will continue, this time focusing on mental health and psychology. Guest speakers include clinical psychologist Dr. Judith Arndell, mental health specialist and substance abuse counselor Fernando Richardson, as well as local school counselor and therapist Gina Muskan Mamtani Mahubani. The seminars are geared towards promoting public dialogue about key issues that the country faces in its development and the role that USM can play. USM is hoping to develop a bachelor degree program in psychology and social work within the next year. This is good news for our students who wish to pursue a career in psychology or social work while remaining at home. Residents of St. Martin who are considering a career in medicine have the opportunity to study locally at the American University of the Caribbean School of Medicine. The AUC is also offering a scholarship to students who wish to attend the medical school. And this scholarship will cover the full tuition, and it's available to eligible St. Martin residents. Already there are 4 local students who have received such a scholarship and who are gearing up for graduation this year. The ministry is pleased to have AOC as a strategic partner in the education of our local students in the medical field. We congratulate all the scholarship recipients and look forward to their graduation and subsequently to their return to serve their community, St. Martin. I encourage those interested in the field of medicine to make use of this unique opportunity and apply to the AUC, where I have no doubt that they will receive a solid foundation at a top-class medical institution. Last week, I welcomed home 8 young men who completed their 6 months of training in construction programs at the MIC Institute of Technology in Trinidad and Tobago. The program was a collaborative effort of the Department of Youth, the Division Study Financing, and the Department of Labor and Social Affairs. Trainees earned their MIC IT certifications in plumbing, electrical installation, masonry, and carpentry. They successfully completed their 6 months specialized training in building construction technology level 2 and have returned home to put their skills to use in rebuilding our country. On St. Martin, the MIC Institute of Technology continues to collaborate with the National Institute for Professional Advancement, the NIPA, in the training of 97 residents in construction programs. The government and this ministry are working along with the board of NIPA to have these programs fully integrated into the certified training programs available locally. The Career and Study Fair that was held last week turned out to be a very successful event. The 3 institutions that I mentioned earlier, the Department of Youth, the Division Study Financing, and the Department of Labor and Social Affairs, along with several colleges and universities, as well as local companies, were present, giving our students and the general public an insight into the realm of career and study options. The Kingston UNESCO Cluster Office extended an invitation to St. Martin to participate in a consultative meeting on blended learning program for teacher training in the Caribbean, and the 11th Policy Dialogue Forum of the International Task Force on Teachers. The meeting and forum began on November 5th and will run until November 9th, 2018 in Montego Bay, Jamaica. The Department of Education selected Dr. Rolinda Carter, Dean of Academics of the University of St. Martin, to represent St. Martin in this consultative meeting. All expenses for attending these meetings will be covered by the UNESCO. We look forward to hearing Dr. Carter's report on her return to the island. Last week, I had a very progressive meeting with the Windward Islands Teachers Union, the WITU, where several matters were addressed. We discussed the final report of the FAVE PSVE mediation, which they accepted and pledged to monitor the progress with their members. The issue of general adjustment in the school vacation schedule was also reviewed. Given the fact that the Foundation for Academic and Vocational Education, FAVE, had requested a specific change in the vacation schedule to enable the academic section of the academy to move back to its location on the L.B. Scott Road, so the FAVE's request was considered a very unique, specific request, which was related to the academic section moving back to the Ebenezer, moving from the Ebenezer campus to the campus at the L.B. Scott Road. When taking the decision concerning the general vacation adjustment, I also took into consideration the fact that the vacation schedule was made public since October 2015, so 3 years ago, and at that same time had also been provided to the school boards. Other than FAVE, no other school board has asked for a vacation adjustment. Therefore, the Y2's request for a general adjustment to the vacation schedule will not be granted. Except for the FAVE, the vacation schedule for the Christmas break remains from December 17th, 2018 through January 1st, 2019. School, therefore, will reopen on Wednesday, January the 2nd, 2019. The National Sports Institute, in collaboration with the Department of Sports and the St. Martin Sports Olympic Federation, is calling on all business community members to exercise their corporate social responsibility at this year's Brown Pelican Sports Award, because sports does matter. This year, the organizing committee is adding a VIP area to the awards ceremony to raise additional funds to assist with the repairing and rebuilding of our local sports facilities. Our sports facilities were hit hard by Hurricane Irma, and for our community to be able to fully utilize and enjoy our facilities, public-private partnerships are crucial to the process. Sports is very vital to the well-being of a community and serves as a coping mechanism to the realities that we face in times of disasters. Therefore, by purchasing a VIP table at the Brown Pelican Sports Awards, you can make a difference. For a donation of $500, you will receive entry of 8 persons to the Brown Pelican Sports Awards with full VIP treatment. If you have any questions or need any information regarding the VIP tables, please feel free to contact Janelle Presentacion at janelle.presentacion@stmartingov.org. Remember, the event will be held on Sunday, November 18th, 2018, at the tent at the Princess Port de Plaisance Hotel in Cole Bay. At this time, I wish to say special congratulations to Kelron Bellot, an exceptional young man who represented himself and our country well at the recently held OCT conference here on St. Martin. Kelron wrote the winning speech for the competition conducted by the Honorable Prime Minister, and he was part of the panel discussion during the conference. Kelron, you have done well. Kudos to you, your parents, and your teachers. We look forward to hearing more from you and to having you represent St. Martin on an international level. St. Martin's Day. As I mentioned to you at the beginning of my press briefing, we are days away from St. Martin's Day. This year, the official celebrations, as the Prime Minister said, will be organized by our brothers and sisters on the north side. There are also many pre-St. Martin Day activities and events being held on both sides of the island. And I encourage you and your family to mark the day with a focus on unity. Sualiga, the land as well as the people, has a saltiness that can cleanse and be also a disinfectant. Without a doubt, things will go wrong and need correction. We must identify the social ills among us, beginning first with ourselves. As we would use salt to clean a wound, let us wash away the negativity that plagues us and apply the genuine love and care for our fellow man. We must protect our culture and what it means to be a son or a daughter of this soil, Sualiga. So as we celebrate St. Martin's Day, let us make the pledge to be the salt of this great land. Let us continue to build each other up and truly be our brother's keeper. Use St. Martin's Day to reflect on where we were and how far we have come. Pledge and rededicate yourselves to ensuring that St. Martin Saint-Martin is the salt of this region as we move forward and overcome together. On behalf of the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sport, I wish you all in advance a happy an enjoyable St. Martin Day, the day the rest of the world saw the beautifulness of Sualiga, land of salt. Thank you for watching and for listening, and I'll be available for any relevant questions that you may have. Have a pleasant day.
Thank you, Minister Smith, for your opening remarks. If you've just joined us, you are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing. We now move on to the question and answer session. Lyndon Brown of BCN TV, you have the floor.
Good morning to the people of St. Martin. Happy St. Martin Day in advance. And morning to the ministers. Question to Minister Smith. I can hear your presentation just now on the school fighting. As we speak, the police are busy investigating the matter. One of the students are in the hospital. Now, as a Minister of Education, do you have anything in plan to combat this ongoing violence in our schools?
Well, thank you very much for the question. Starting this evening, as I just said, there is a forum for schools, for teachers, for parents, for the public in general, and this will take place at the University of St. Martin, where this topic will be addressed from various angles. And it starts with information, it starts with education, and so I'm inviting the general public to come out this evening, especially parents, because I believe that it starts with parents. We can place, the responsibility on teachers, but as I said before, parents are the first teachers of our children, and it starts with giving them values and showing them who is responsible and what their role is, and respect. And so I hope that this evening's forum will be the beginning of several others, so that we can try to combat this together. So it's not only an education problem, but it's a problem within our society that we all need to tackle together.
Thank you, Minister Smith, for your response. Stephen Cerulean of PJD2 Radio, you have the floor.
Excellencies, good morning. My question is for the Minister of VSA, Emily. Minister Smith stated that some students recently returned from Trinidad for this very important training. What provision is being put in place to ensure that the students are being placed in the proper functions that they studied for?
Stephen, thank you for the question. Actually, as soon as I was aware that they were returning, I've already made some inquiries to ensure that they are placed. And I can't be sure, but I think they're well in process of being placed. The other thing I did understand is that some of them actually have ambitions to start their own business, which is great. I mean, that's a great start to get the training on the background and then become a small entrepreneur and grow your business for yourself. So certainly it has the attention of the ministry, and we certainly think that, we want to show that this is not just education, but this is a path to a better life. So this has my full attention, and I think they can come back and report as soon as we're set in terms of where they're being placed. But that is a priority for the ministry. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister Lee, for your response. Andrew Dick of the Daily Herald, you have the floor.
Yes, good morning to the ministers. Minister Smith, concerning the fight again in school, it's nothing new. You said that there's a forum scheduled today. This was planned long time before. It's nothing that it came out of the situation that recently happened. So your take as Minister of Education, what will you do concerning these fights in the schools?
Thank you very much for your question. It's an ongoing process. Indeed, the forum was planned before, and they will continue so that we can begin this dialogue with parents, with teachers, with the community, to help mitigate this problem. What will we do? I can also turn to you and ask, what will you do as press? We all have a responsibility to deal with this issue. So as Minister of Education, we're dealing with FERNS. We will be looking at aspects of how we can work directly with children, but it is something that is of our concern, and we will be dealing with it.
Thank you, Minister Smith. We now move on to the second round of questions. Lyndon Brown, you have the floor.
Question to the Honorable Prime Minister. It have been surfacing that you said, I just wanted to just clarify this statement, that Christmas Day would not be an holiday, and it's all over, Prime Minister. So please make it clear again to the people of St. Martin, because it seemed like the negative flies very fast.
Thank you, Lyndon Brown. I didn't say Christmas Day wasn't going to be a holiday. I said November 12th will not be a regular, it will not be a holiday. November 11th is not a national holiday. So therefore, the questions in the community was, are we getting the Monday off? As you know, on the national holidays, if it falls on a weekend, the Monday is usually given. November 11th is not a national holiday, so therefore November 12th will not be given off for the general public. But I did not state Christmas. On Christmas, actually, what I stated about Christmas is that civil servants will be given December 24th off, and I will also give December 31st off for All Year's Eve. And that is something that we decided in the Council of Ministers, just for clarification.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Stephen Cirillion of PJ82, you have the floor.
I'm going to generalize my question. Ministers, you recently arrived at the 100 days mark in office. First of all, looking back, going forward, how has it been for you?
I'll start. Thank you, Stephen, for that question. I must state looking back, it has been a process, and I have learned patience. I've learned that communication, and more communication. I've also learned that recovery is a process, and that I have to continue to emphasize that to the general public. I think we have moved quite a long way as it relates to the trust fund and ensuring, when the myth was there that we won't get the monies, now we've seen that we are getting the monies, but it's a process. And I think that it's been quite an experience, dealing with this whole recovery. I would say it's a challenge, but it's a challenge that the Council of Ministers have decided that we will do it together and in unity as well. I think that it has not been an easy journey. We're fighting against social media, we're fighting against fake news, we're fighting against many things, but nevertheless, we continue to stay focused and stay as a unit. But the past 100 days has been quite an experience. I can state that, in all honesty, it's not the best time for anyone to be in government. However, this is the opportunity now as Council of Ministers to make sure that we take St. Martin to the next level. So I must say it's quite an experience and a challenge that we are facing and that we are fitted and up to overcome.
Thank you for the question. I would certainly agree with the Prime Minister that it's a challenge. It's been a learning experience. I've been able to get first-hand experience on what's going on in the schools. I've been able to visit all the schools. I've been able to meet with most of the school boards. I've met with the union of teachers. I've been able to be in Parliament. We were able to present the law on study financing in Parliament, and Parliament has passed it. So a lot of things are happening, and I'm very pleased to be able to serve the country and my people in this capacity. It's a humbling experience, but I'm going to do the best that I can and serve the people because that's what they want. Working with colleagues in the Council of Ministers has also been a very positive experience. We all are focused, and the goal is to serve our country to the best of our ability. So thank you. I want to thank the people of St. Martin for giving me the opportunity to serve in this capacity.
Stephen, thanks for the question. Perhaps slightly different than some of the other ministers. My term is a continuation of a couple terms as Minister of VSA. So in a sense, it's given me, and actually this really shows, I think, it demonstrates what's the benefit of continuity in government, right? I've had the luxury of being able to work on a number of projects, and rather than being interrupted by a change in administration, been allowed to continue in that. And I think that you can see the results of that. We're planning on a groundbreaking for the hospital before the end of the year. I mean, that's, as everybody knows, that's a project that we've been working on very, very hard for the past 2 years. I think you see the results in terms of some of the legislation that we're proposing, the general health insurance, which we're talking about, that everybody in St. Martin, we believe that access to health insurance is a basic human right, access to health care, but also making sure that our whole healthcare system is reformed so that it's efficient, it's effective, and that it's affordable. We have a number of programs in the first tranche of the World Bank. So we've had the possibility to get many of the projects from the ministry's perspective really launched and well underway. Our skills training program, the debris removal program, we're working on that so that we can work on reducing the amount of debris out in the community. The $25 million in support for the reinforcement of the current SMMC, as well as an investment in terms of reinforcing the new general hospital. Keep in mind that originally was slated to be somewhere in the third tranche, but because of the, again, continuity in government and the ability to continue to lobby from successive terms, we've managed to move that from the third tranche into the first tranche. And so I think that the ministry has done a lot. We completed the basic necessities voucher, or the food voucher program. So we've had a lot of programs that we've executed. The ministry, I'm very proud of the ministry. I think they're doing a tremendous job. People have a tendency to bash government, and I understand the frustration out there in the community, but the fact is that all of the staff in the Ministry of VSA are working much longer hours. They have much more responsibilities than normal, and they're working in a difficult environment for themselves personally, so they all have their challenges, as many of us do, still building back better, repairing our homes. But yet they deal also with the community that comes in, the financial aid, medical aid, so they're dealing with people that are coming in that are very stressed. Another project is the reintegration shelter. That's done a tremendous job in terms of moving people out of the Carnival Village, people who are homeless, but not only giving them a decent place to live, 3 good meals a day, but also guiding them in terms of how do they put their lives back together, what government programs, what government assistance is there that they can tap into. So I'm very proud of the ministry. I'm very proud of the work that we've accomplished. And then just to sort of dovetail into what the other ministers have said, every council of ministers has slightly different personalities, and it takes a little bit of time to get used to each other. And I think that finally, after our first 100 days, I think we've found a good working rhythm together. I think that we have good lines of communication, good levels of trust, and I think that the country can expect to see more and more good news coming out from this government and this Council of Ministers.
Thank you, ministers, for your responses. Andrew Dick, you have the floor.
Prime Minister, concerning the airport, the financial status of the airport, I know that MP Heiligerd earlier this week was very concerned about the finances of the airport. So what's the Council of Ministers doing to get the airport viable?
Thank you, Andrew Dick, for that question. I can tell you that the Council of Ministers is supporting all progress for the airport. We have a team right now, the steering committee, the representative of St. Martin, Mr. Marcel Gums, and the interim recovery committee member, Mr. Abel Knotneers. They are right now, well, they're actually on their way back, but yesterday and the day before, they were busy with the World Bank and the steering committee negotiating, especially on the part of airport. We're going to get the final results within short, but all of our direction as it relates to the Council of Ministers is to ensure that the airport gets the necessary assistance that is needed to ensure that they are back on track and up and operational even better than before. So that has been our focus, and we will continue to do such in every capacity possible to make sure that the airport is back and up and running. It's part of our one of our priorities, as there are many priorities, but the airport is definitely on the top of that list.
Mr. Lee?
If you don't mind, Andrew, dovetail into that a little bit. You know, from a labor perspective, I mean, look, from a country perspective, getting the airport back online is critical. From a labor perspective, it's critical. If we want to see our tourism economy recover, the airport has to get back operational if we want the jobs that are associated with the tourism economy. So I think it's certainly an issue that has the collective concern of the entire Council of Ministers. And I think, you know, based on our conversations yesterday with the representative in the steering committee, it's important that people recognize that for projects to be picked up in the World Bank process, in the funding process, it needs the unanimous approval of the 3 stakeholders in that steering committee. So yesterday, or the meeting on Monday or Tuesday of the steering committee, the feedback that we got was that all 3 partners of the steering committee are in favor of supporting the airport with a loan. The other thing is, I think about 2 weeks ago, there was a meeting with all of the relevant stakeholders, so that's World Bank, Dutch representatives, the tourism department, Ministry of Finance, and the airport as well. And that was a very good meeting where a lot of points of confusion were clarified, and even, for example, the amount of money that really, what are we talking about in terms of what's the gap that the airport needs in terms of funding. So the World Bank has some good information to start that discussion in terms of what amounts the tranche, the grant should be for. There's also discussions with the European Investment Bank in terms of them sharing that amount. So in other words, we don't want to overburden the limited amount of funds that are available in the trust fund with one project. So by bringing in a partner in that will help to spread the financial impact. So, and also the Council of Ministers is very much aware as to the pending cash flow issues, and our reports back from the steering committee as well were positive that there's a recognition that there's a need for short-term injection of cash. So I think that the discussions are all moving in the right direction. And of course, the interesting thing is that the interest rates that you're talking about are much more affordable rates than if you had to go, for example, to the open market. So it's moving. I wish, of course, that it had moved faster, given the strategic and critical nature of it, of the airport. But it is moving in a positive direction.
Minister Smith?
Thank you. I forgot to mention just now that the volleyball tournaments are ongoing, and this week will be the finals at the Sports Auditorium. So if you want to check when the games are scheduled, go to the Facebook page of the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, and you'll be able to find that. So those are the volleyball finals this weekend.
Thank you, Minister Smith, Prime Minister, and Minister Lee. We now move on to the third round of questions. However, seeing that we do have ample time, I will allow a fourth round. So we now move on to the third round of questions. Lyndon Brown, you have the floor.
To Minister Lee. Minister Lee, human resources is necessary. The council have admitted that there are poverty on the island. Is there any document? Has there any study to come to an understanding how much poverty, the percentage of poverty that are on the island?
Thank you for your question. Getting updated information for decision making is always one of government's priorities. Getting an updated understanding of what's happened with our unemployment rates, the poverty levels, is again certainly one of the priorities for the ministry. I do not believe that we have a updated study post Irma, but again, that is certainly one of the things the ministry is working on. That said, again, remember the capacity, the bandwidth of the ministry itself is limited, and I think on the short term, we're more focused on dealing with the increased requests for assistance in the community. So it is a project that the ministry is of course interested in. I don't know the exact timelines in terms of what kind of when we would be able to access those numbers.
Thank you, Minister Lee. Stephen Cerulean.
Prime Minister, the St. Martin Anti-Poverty Platform has been talking greatly about the lack of attention to poverty eradication on St. Martin. In fact, they are seeking a meeting with the Council of Ministers to address just that issue. Have you received any communication from them requesting such a meeting, and if you have, how soon will that meeting take place?
Thank you for that question. The lack of attention on poverty eradication, whether I received a notice for a meeting, I have not as yet, but when that information comes to me, I will most certainly entertain such. It's something that we should be talking about, and I'm sure that the Ministry of VSR would also be included in those discussions. Remember, we are still working on those sustainable development goals, and poverty eradication is one of them. So I haven't received the request as yet, but I will after here I will inquire some more, but I haven't. And when we do, we will go through the regular process of ensuring that it's scheduled on the for a Council of Ministers meeting.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Andrew Dick.
Prime Minister, sticking to the airport situation, they just recently collected some monies from Nagico, and also, but still they are unable to make the payrolls sometimes. So, are you monitoring it? And based on the timeline of the World Bank actually coming through with a grant, is there a plan B?
Thank you for that. Indeed, they did collect funding from the insurance monies from Nagico, and indeed it has recently brought to our attention, and I re-emphasize, recently brought to our attention, the Council of Ministers, that they are unable to pay their payrolls, or will soon be unable to pay the payrolls. Are we monitoring that? Indeed, we are monitoring such. This is one of the reasons that in the negotiations we're looking to see how perhaps a bridge loan can be given to the airport to cover the operational costs within the time frame that is needed before the amount that they're supposed to get from the trust fund will be given to them. But indeed, we are monitoring such, and especially in light of knowing that recently that they're having some cash problems at the airport.
Minister Lee.
Just to add to that, my understanding, and I guess it probably should be verified, but the insurance payouts that come from Nagico to the airport need to be released by the bondholders. So the bondholders basically have control of those funds, and until the bondholders feel that there's an overall comprehensive plan in terms of how the airport's going to be restructured, they're not going to release those funds, because exactly they don't want reconstruction money probably burned in operational expenses. So they can't use, as far as I understand, they can't use those insurance monies for the operational costs unless the bondholders are in agreement.
Thank you, Minister Lee. We now move on to the final round of questions. Lyndon Brown, you have the floor.
Question to Minister Smith. In connection with the school fighting again, presently now there's a teenager being arrested at the police station. Do the police station have the capacity for teenager cell to house teenagers. Recently, there was a problem with a gentleman who the government of St. Martin have to pay some kind of fine because of the condition at the police station was not hygienic enough. And now teenagers are presently held at the police station. Is there any capacity, any decency for I'm not saying what has happened is right. It is wrong. So give us your take on this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for the question. I would be sure. I believe that the police, as they look at that situation, they will know whether they have the capacity. The person, the teenager, would at this time be there for questioning, and and is not being incarcerated at this time, and so that teenager is also not, I'm sure, housed with the adults. There are ways and means as to how they will deal with it, but I'm sure that it's being dealt with in a very professional manner, and the more details on this would need to come from the Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Minister Smith. Stephen Cerillion.
My final question is for the Minister of ACYS. Mr. Interestingly, how you reversed the question on my colleague a while ago, Andrew Dick, when he asked specifically, what is the ministry doing to combat the school disturbances? But taking it from a different angle, is it your intention at least to drive the message home, basically informing the school children in particular that this issue needs to stop once and for all from an educational point of view?
Thank you very much. If you will notice that, as I said before, the entire community is responsible for raising children, and we have moved away from that. The school, the Department of Education Ministry, we're doing all that we can via the teachers, via the school board, and via even the parents, by providing information, by providing the support that they need to do that. But it's a process that has developed over time, and it will take time also to mitigate it. I also believe, and I would like to reverse that on you too, that the media can play a great role in trying to educate our people that this is wrong too. I mean, this is something that we have to do collectively, and it's not only the responsibility of education. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Andrew Dick, you have the final question.
Minister Smith, the government, as Minister of Education, don't you think that you have a role to play when it comes to the policies? I mean, the student did get attacked in a school bus, and you could see in the video that the school bus driver was there. I mean, basically what we're saying is, as the Minister of Education, are you going to have any dialogue or any policies put in place in order to stop this from happening again?
I'm sure that I'm not running away from the responsibility. You didn't hear me say that. I'm saying that this is a joint responsibility, and indeed, the Ministry of Education is looking into all of those areas and will deal with them in the proper way. But you know, it is a joint responsibility. We're all part of this process. And to put it on one ministry or just one aspect of society, it's not. It takes a village to raise a child, and we're all part of that village. So I know that that's what we're about. But we will take the lead in dealing with this matter with school board with bus drivers, with the schools, etc., etc.
Thank you, Minister Smith, for your response. Honorable ministers of the council, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, November 7th, 2018.